want to do this quick little video and speak about how this is one of thousands of examples where the Mandela effect proves itself to have some valid substance. It is real. There's proof that it is real, and it's in things like this. John Hopkins, that's one. Now, I personally don't have an anchor memory connected with this. I don't. If you were to say to me, hey, this has always been John Hopkins and it's changed in this reality, I'd say, okay, maybe. I don't remember. I just didn't pay close enough attention. So that's part of the problem. But here's one where several people have said, I know that it was John Hopkins, not John's. And they're convinced of it. So you got a lot of people saying that, a lot of people having the memories anchor or not. This is one of those that early on when I was Mandela affected, people had been talking about it. One of, again, thousands. But there's a commonality. Lots of people are seeing it and saying the same thing. With that, I should also go back and say in a prior video, I talked about having anchor memories and being absolutely convinced that the place in the Bible where Easter is mentioned was in the Gospels and not in Acts. However, now that I think about it, I might have jumped the gun a little bit, because my anchor memory is me talking about it and referencing it back to the Gospels, but I wasn't holding a Bible open when I was talking to people about it. I was just talking. So it could have been 7 years ago when this all started for me. I found Easter to be in the Bible, talked about it many times, but was connecting it to the Gospels without actually, my anchor memory there needs to be anchored to me specifically looking at it in the Gospels, not me talking about it being in the Gospels. So I would have to admit, got a little excited too early on that one, but more evidence that the Mandela effect is real is that everybody came back, all the Bible, people focused on Bible changes, they all came back and said, it's an Acts, dude. Nope, never been in the Gospels. It's in the book of Acts. So you stop there and you think, well, there's all these people that are remembering in unison where it was, and here I'm jumping to the gun. So there's an argument that Mandela effects are just people just going along with things, or groupthink, or just the power of suggestion. Well, if that was true here, my power of suggestion should have had everybody just agreeing, oh yeah, it's always been but that's exactly the opposite. The Mandela effect community said, no, it's an Acts, always been an Acts. And I would even argue that with Mandela effects, we should have like a consensus, like a large group of known people that know Mandela effects to say, you know what, I agree, this used to be this way, I used to be that way. And you kind of, in a way, canonize the Mandela effects that are bona fide and recognized. That being said, I do have a few that I'm absolutely certain about that I seem to be the only one that has that memory, or very, very, very few people do. And I understand that happens. And that's just the way it is. I don't see a ton of people talking about cornflakes with a K, but that one's huge for me. The Walmart logo, I don't see a lot of people, if anybody, talking about the Walmart logo change. It's huge for me. Vicks, VICS, for Vicks Vapor Rub. There's all these little ones. Even Hillary Clinton with one L is not one that's talked about much. It's not a popular one. But I still know that they were. I don't need validation on that point, but in general, if you're trying to convince somebody that the Mandela effect is something that occurred, talking about the ones that are not commonly recognized would not help in convincing anybody. But then at the same time, over the past 7 years, I've come to believe that there's no point in trying to convince anybody, anyone. It's people either see it or they don't, and trying to convince anyone just is an exercise in futility. And I was thinking in church today how similar this is to sharing the gospel, the Calvinism versus Arminianism. So there's this belief that God predestines those that he calls. And if you're not predestined, if you're not chosen by God, you're not going to see it. You're not going to get it. You're going to be blind to it to the end of your life, you're going to die completely ignorant, and God is only going to show and call specific people. That's predestination. I've never liked the predestination view, the Calvinistic, you're only saved if God chooses you to be saved. But you could apply that theory to this Mandela effect, that only those who are really meant to see it are ever going to see it, and everybody else, just forget about it because you're wasting your breath. You're talking to a wall. They're not going to see it. They're not going to get it. It's just the way it is. I am becoming a bit of a Mandela effect Calvinist, you would say. Not that their eternal salvation is on the line. I don't agree with going that far, but because to me this is not about salvation. This is just understanding that we live in a created world. Our world is created. When people talk about living in a simulation, to me that's no different than saying God created everything. We didn't just spawn into existence by accident. By accident, we are created. This place is created. The computer simulation people kind of leave out the point of a holy and righteous God, and all that comes with it, the whole good and evil paradigm. They don't mention that. They tend to defer to the 13-year-old kid that's in his parents' house working on his computer creating our reality. But really, I see any kind of talk of simulation or Mandela effect showing glitches in reality, or showing that this reality is a created place, essentially goes back to, like we always said, it was created. And anything can happen, anything can change. I've seen miraculous changes right before my eyes so many times. It just blows my mind. But in trying to convince others that the Mandela effect is real, it doesn't matter how smart they are, it doesn't matter how into quantum physics they are, or how open-minded they are. None of that seems to matter. They either see it or they don't. But back to more evidence that the Mandela effect is real. Let's talk about this guy, John Hopkins, or what everybody seems to remember him as being, John Hopkins. I don't have a solid memory one way or another, but I came across I was like on Google Maps, and I was looking at some places that I have lived, and I came across this residual of John Hopkins Elementary School, and I thought, isn't that funny? I mean, I probably drove right past the school, you know, John Hopkins Elementary. Now, keep in mind, if you type in John Hopkins into your computer, you're only going to get references to Johns Hopkins, this dude that lived way back when. This guy here, Johns Hopkins. How he got the name Johns, I don't know, but Johns with an S, not John, but Johns, Johns Hopkins. That's the dude. But the school, John Hopkins Rams, is here. And here's the funny thing: John Hopkins Elementary is actually built on John Hopkins Avenue. So the school and the road are all named in honor of this man. They named the school in honor of this man, but they named it incorrectly. Now, how many educational institutions are going to take a historical figure like this fella here and misspell his name? For goodness sakes. John Hopkins. Never been. He's never had that name. His name is Johns Hopkins. There's the official logos on the university. There's him in his older years. Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. And we have the elementary school that was built in 1978. So if you're thinking this was just built and they got it wrong, no, these guys have been around since 1978. That's how old this school is. They have been talking about this guy's name. This school here, built in 1978. Think about how many years have passed, and nobody has stopped to make the correction. Nobody said, just, it blows my mind. Nobody has stopped to say, we need to change the name of the street. We need to update the school monument sign, because this is just embarrassing. We got his name wrong. You would think, how many years has passed since 1978? What are we? Good God, that's like 45 years of using this guy's name, and yet reality has never changed. This has always been, people don't want to believe the Mandela effect is real. And you've got a case like John Hopkins switching to Johns, and an elementary school standing strong in defiance to his name, saying, nope, I remember John Hopkins. That's what it is. That's what it always has been. And nobody has come along in 45 years to correct that school, to make mention of it in any way whatsoever. I mean, how hard is it to correct this, and how embarrassing is it for them to have it wrong all these years? Has nobody ever pointed it out to them? Anyway, I'll get off the soapbox here. I'm just saying things have changed. There's evidence if you want to be open-minded, if you want to look at it. I do try to stick to anchor memories where I know 100%. I like to talk about things that I know 100%, but with this one, I don't really have that any anchor memory connected. I just see when I come across a school like that, I just see that and I laugh and I looked to see if there's any other historical figure named John Hopkins that they could be linked to, and I can't find any. So unless reality coughs one up tomorrow, but you know how that sometimes that happens. When I talk to non-Mandela affected people or people that want to live in denial of it, I usually bring up things like the thinker, because the thinker, I mean, I just, not only do so many people have a clear memory of it being fist to forehead, there's so much residual evidence and pictures. It's a great one to bring up. Things like that. I try to stick with these ones that have the weight and the evidence behind it, yet it doesn't matter. You talk about it to people and they either, I mean, they just don't see it. It's like everybody who sees the Mandela effect has already seen it. They've already gotten it. They've already been drawn to it. They've already woken up their eye. They're just in complete shock that it happens. The rest of the world is just in denial. So I guess I'm something of a Calvinistic Mandela effect person, where you either you either know or you don't, and there's just no convincing. But I also would agree that everybody, whether they deny it or not, there's some residual vibration where they understand and remember that way. Because when I first was doing all the quizzes with people, they would remember the old way, the way that it is not right now. They would cough up that memory, and then they would switch, they would change position as if something was programming their mind to line up with the current reality, whatever you want to call it. But I better run. Just wanted to share that about John Hopkins. Hope you all have a great week, and God bless.